Good, let's start. I was told I'm allowed to. Welcome to the last talk in the OWASP project track, which is about the OWASP Juice Shop, which this year, actually, beginning of October, has its 10th anniversary. So the question of this talk is a little bit, okay, is it still fresh, or is it already legacy and should go into the archive or trash bin at some point? Who knows the Juice Shop already? Okay, you've probably also seen this wallpaper, right, that I'm using here, and at least at some point, I suppose. Because this is now an anniversary talk, I didn't want to use the old wallpaper, right? So I actually asked some really great AI generator to make a new version of it, which looks a bit more shiny. So yeah, let's start. My name is Bjoern. I'm the project lead of the OWASP Juice Shop. I invented this whole thing, and I also have, I guess, still the most code commits. And what I would like to do with you now is take you basically on a tour through the entire history of the project, right? From the very beginning up to where we are now. And we look at all kinds of aspects, from the actual main purpose being a learning tool for hacking, down to some technical information behind the scenes and all kinds of stuff. So let's start with the idea. Why did I do this? So in 2007, 2008, I basically started teaching web application security to internal development teams. Back then, I used as a demo application for exercises this app here, Altoro Mutual, which is a fake banking website provided by a well-known tool vendor with 3 letters, and they basically came up with this as a demo tool for their security product, right, to demonstrate how that works. But you could also hack it manually, and that's exactly what I used it for. It had like a handful of things you could actually do, and then learn a bit about cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and 1 or 2 other things. I later switched to another vulnerable application called the Budget Store, which is also a companion app to a tool, but not a commercial one, but to the Z attack proxy, so the ZAP, well-known ZAP project. So if you've ever used ZAP, or if you ever saw some video where the ZAP people explain some feature of their tool, they typically use the Budget Store as a demo app. This is a server-side rendered application. By the time basically our teams were starting to be interested more and more in let's say, more web-heavy, front-end-heavy things, right? And Budget Store being from 2010, it was a JSP application, so not much JavaScript going on. I have one honorable mention, not directly related to the Juice Shop history, OWASP WebGoat. I also looked into this. I never used it myself in trainings because it had a different concept, right? It was more like you follow different lessons and you do individual lessons one by one, and basically can very nicely learn on your own that way. But also server-side rendered. So 2014, I came up with the idea to create my own vulnerable application, which should have a bit more variety of things to actually to learn, and also the primary idea was it should be a rich internet application. So I chose AngularJS version 1.3 or 4, I think, at the time, as the front-end framework. And basically, I did this to learn Angular and Node.js, right? But at the same time, also create something that is useful for my own security trainings. This little slideshow you see here is actually from the Juice Shop version 2, which until yesterday were the only oldest screenshots that I had. Luckily, we now have even screenshots from the very original version 1.0 of the Juice Shop, which looked like this back then. So it looks a lot like the Budget Store for some reason, because that was my main inspiration back in the day. So when I created the Juice Shop in 2014, it was a completely personal pet project. So it lived under my own GitHub account. This was the website, so basically just generated GitHub page. Pretty ugly, but what can you do? It wasn't the main focus. In 2016, after having given a few talks at meetups about the project, I was asked if I wouldn't want to submit this to the OWASP as a project, and I did, and it was more or less immediately accepted because it was already a complete, fully functional application, right? So it was not just an idea, it was already there. So it joined OWASP back then as an incubator project. Here you see the website from the MediaWiki era of OWASP, so also been some time ago. And in 2018, Juice Shop was promoted to flagship status, because by then it had grown quite significantly under the OWASP banner, and also had gotten a lot more features than the original version, which we will now go through one by one, so you hopefully see why this is a flagship project. So I was asked already, why is it called Juice Shop? So I'm from Germany, and we have a word for shops where you have a really, really terrible shopping experience, right? So like a really dumb, very unfriendly employees and everything. So in Germany we call that Saftladen. So that is basically put together from the word Saft and Laden, which is juice and shop. So I just word by word translated that. The fact that the Juice Shop was written 100% in JavaScript seriously did not play any role. That was just coincidental, but luckily that was the case, because this also led to the logo being created later. Talking about logos, the original Juice Shop had this nice public domain image as a logo, or as a fav icon, which I think which is one of the first you still get when you Google for juice, right? I think it's in Wikipedia under orange juice. This is one of the pictures. I then later had the idea to use this quite popular JS shield and somehow do something with it, and came up with this leaking juice box idea. And as I am absolutely not an artist, I have sometimes good ideas, I think, but I cannot draw or paint or anything. But luckily, one of our graphics designers in my company actually took like a few hours and actually drew the 2015 version that you see here. And then later, 2017, and since then it didn't change, we made an upgraded version which looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, so much for the very general history. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges in the Juice Shop, which is basically what we call the exercises that you can do, which are about finding certain vulnerabilities and actually exploiting them. So the very first version of Juice Shop, released 21st of October 2014, had 23 hacking challenges. And it was mostly technical stuff like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, some access control issues where you could access some admin page which you weren't supposed to, and some information leakage things. Today, Juice Shop has 107 hacking challenges from all OWASP top 10s ever. It just doesn't have what is it called? Buffer overflow. It doesn't have a buffer overflow. I think the first OWASP top 10 contained buffer overflow in the list. This one we don't have, but everything else, I would say, we have at least one challenge available, but also lots of other challenges. A lot of stuff, for example, around logic flaws, right? Secure design violations and stuff like that. Especially the things which automated tools are really terrible at finding because they don't understand the business logic, right? So there's a big variety. We even by now, since last year, have almost a handful of Web3 related challenges where you can even connect your own Ethernet test wallet to the Juice Shop and then do some shenanigans with smart contracts. So the original scoreboard, we saw it in the original slideshow already, looked like this. As I said, 23 challenges. I think all of them, maybe one isn't. No, I think all of them are still in the current version. In 2016, we had switched to the dark layout that those of you who know the Juice Shop will probably know as the only ever default look and feel. So we had introduced difficulty levels to make it easier for newcomers to actually pick some easy challenges first. But everything fitted still nicely onto one web page, right? So no need for scrolling or for any other crazy stuff. In 2018, we had 6 difficulty levels because we wanted to add more complex challenges over time, and 3 levels was just not enough. So we increased it to 6. We had, as you can see on the screen, you can only now have, you only see the first 2 and then third one a little bit. So you had to scroll quite a bit. That's why 2019 we introduced categories and filters. So basically you could decide which difficulty levels you wanted to show. Also quite fancy, the stars for the different levels would fill up in green when you solved more challenges. So this was a pretty nice visual gimmick. And also we had filters by category of challenge. So you could just, for example, here, I want to see only the cross-site scripting and injection challenges, which are level 1 to 3, right? In 2021, we introduced something completely new, the so-called coding challenges. So it works like this. You solve a hacking challenge, for example, some cross-site scripting challenge, and afterwards you can, from the scoreboard, launch an associated coding challenge, which would show you the actual source code where the vulnerability is. And this is not some fake separate file that we put somewhere. This is pulled directly from the server, from the actual running JavaScript code. So it's always up to date, right? So that was the idea. We didn't want to have too much maintenance effort. So, and here you can see different checkboxes, and your task as a user is to actually select the line or multiple lines where you think the vulnerability is. When you submit this and you have the correct answer, and you can try as often as you want, you get to the second phase of the challenge, which is the fixing phase or fix it phase, where you are presented with 3 or 4 different options how this challenge or how this vulnerability could be remediated. So in this case, here it proposes to change some call of a bypass security trust HTML function with trust script instead, which is probably not the right answer. You would then submit this. If it was wrong, it will tell you, no, that's not right, and give you an explanation. If you got the right one, you actually got some extra points. So 31 of the hacking challenges have such an associated coding challenge, so roughly 1/3. Obviously, you cannot do this for example, for the logic error or logic flaw challenges, right? Because they are way too complex and they have no underlying wrong line of code, right? So because there's just some programming misconception, and that would be across multiple files, and this we cannot show here. So all these nice additions led to the fact that by 2023, I would call the scoreboard slightly cluttered. So with all these filters, and we even added some feedback buttons here, and all the different buttons to launch coding challenges, and jump to some cheat sheet related when available. All that stuff made it quite confusing. But luckily, Yannick created a new scoreboard, which looks much, much nicer. So more like a tile-based layout for each of the challenges. You can still filter everything properly, but it's much more compact, right? And you don't have this wide table. You don't have to scroll like crazy. So very, very nicely visualized. And yeah, we basically, over several releases, introduced this and removed the old one, right? So we first added this as an optional new scoreboard if you wanted to have it. Then we basically switched to the new one as default, but the old one was still there if you preferred that. And then we threw the old one out with some major update. So much about the challenges in the Juice Shop. So basically the bread and butter of the application. But it still has some other features which you might not even be aware of, or you might not notice because they are more behind the scenes. So what it has always been is what I call a real fake web shop, right? So it tries to be as realistic as possible. You will, no matter what you order, you will never get it. So that's basically the only break in the immersion. But otherwise, it has everything from product filtering, two-factor authentication setup you can do. You can see your order history. You have status tracking pages, which even take into account what delivery speed you selected and how much time has passed and all kinds of stuff. One feature that was introduced in 2019 is what we call the hacking instructor, which is kind of a little tutorial mode. This is also one of Yannick's additions, which is really, really great for newcomers. So you can, for certain challenges, basically trigger such a tutorial or hacking instructor script, and it will jump to a certain input field and say, okay, first it gives you a brief explanation what this is about. Then it asks you to type something into the field. It will wait until you did, and then it will basically guide you through some of the challenges. I think, how many? 11 or 12 challenges have such a tutorial. And you can, if you want, even run the Juice Shop in a mode where it does not show you the fully unlocked scoreboard by default, but only the level 1 challenges with tutorials. And when you solved all of them, you will get the level 2 tutorial challenges, then the level 3. And when those are all completed, then you get everything visible on the scoreboard. But that's optional. 2016, we introduced a dedicated capture the flag support for Juice Shop because people were asking for that. And this was originally also a third-party contribution where someone had created a little HTML page, I think it was at the beginning, where you just put in the URL of your running Juice Shop server, and when you click a button on the page, the HTML page would basically get all the challenges from the API of the Juice Shop, wrap them into some format which you can then later import into, for example, CTFD as an open source CTF server. We rewrote that later on into a command line tool, which you can use for the same purpose. There you can even decide if you want, for example, hints to be free for the users or if they should pay with points and whatever. And then you can launch the Juice Shop itself in a CTF mode where the success notifications also include a flag code which you can then copy over to CTFD. So essentially the setup of a full working CTF, if you use CTFD, Facebook CTF, deprecated by now, or root the box, takes like maybe half an hour maximum. 2019, another big addition, again by Yannick, multi-juicer. So the thing is, Juice Shop is relatively easy to launch, right? But if someone gets stuck with installing it, it can take a while to actually resolve some issues. And especially from my experience, on Linux, Node.js is not as easy as on Windows sometimes, and then people sometimes got in trouble. Especially those users who used Kali as their runtime environment, because that seems not to be the best environment for running actual applications. So Multi-Juicer fixes that by providing a central platform, basically a Kubernetes cluster with a custom-made load balancer in front, where users can just go, register with a team name, and then after half a minute or so, they have a running JuiceShop instance, which they are tied to directly, and they can invite team members with a team code, or every user can run their own. And in a later version of Multi-Juicer, there was even a small scoreboard introduced, which shows you which of the instances is furthest with the points from the scoreboard, from the internal scoreboard. So this is pretty neat and convenient, and allows you to spin up multiple instances easily. And as JuiceShop is not a very resource-hungry application, you can host a lot of instances even on small hardware. Talking about hardware, this brings us to this neat little thingy that you see here on the bistro table. The JuiceShop Lego tower, which I flew here all the way from Germany. I had to repair it a little bit, but it mainly survived the trip. So how did this come to be? So we had the idea that we wanted to have some nice case, just first of all, just for fun, just to put it somewhere and people can look at it. And then this idea escalated into an idea of, okay, maybe we could put in some Raspberry Pis into this container, and then trainers can just bring this to a training, put it on the table, plug it into the Ethernet, and magically everything works and you have a running multi-juicer. Right? And this is basically what this is, almost plug and play. Here you see some photos, but you can, after the talk, come here and take a look directly. We can even take some levels off if you like to, if you want to take a deeper look into it. Also, all the stickers you can grab are also on the table, so please come to the front after the session. But this is roughly how it, or this is how it looked like when we set it up on 2 days ago at the DSOM and JuiceShop User Day, also here at the conference. So, and with 4 Raspberry Pis, which are running in here, you can easily spin up a Kubernetes cluster that supports like 50, 60 users. That shouldn't be a big deal. JuiceShop also has a feature which one of our other core team members, Timo, created originally, which is the theming support. So you can override almost everything of the look and feel with a declarative way in a YAML file pretty easily. So you can switch to a light layout. You can change, as you can see here, you can change the title of the application. You can change the logo. You can even change all the products, right? Why does this exist? Because this is, I mean, JuiceShop in its vanilla look and feel is totally fine for developers and I would say tech-savvy engineers, right? So no problem. But if you want to present certain vulnerabilities to managers, it's much, much, much easier if the application you show looks like something they recognize. So it looks like an application from the particular company, right? So this is why this actually exists. There are some demo themes delivered with the application, so you can very easily learn how to set this up, and it's also pretty well documented how to actually do this. JuiceShop, for a couple of years, also has built-in cheat detection. So it will measure how long it takes for a user to solve one challenge before or compared to when they solve the previous challenge. And based on the difficulty of the challenges and some other dependency factors, it calculates a cheat score. This is not super accurate, but it gives a rough idea. When I run the automated test suite, which basically exploits the entire challenge suite, I typically get like 97% cheat probability. So that's pretty good. So if you're too fast, JuiceShop will assume you're cheating. So this works for first-time users, right? If someone already has a lot of experience or does a training, for example, and they're just showing something fast, this will look like cheating. But It doesn't really matter because there's no central authority we report this to. So you don't get your Juice Shop uninstalled for cheating. But you could, if you, for example, organize a training or a lecture with students, you could actually look into this if you're interested, right? To see if someone is just following some complete solution online and is not really learning. We introduced also a solution webhook, which can be triggered whenever a challenge is solved. So that can also be quite useful, especially because it also contains the cheat score for the current challenge and also the calculated total cheat score. The Juice Shop also comes with a template for a Grafana dashboard, which you can use to monitor the instance, which will show you all the relevant information and also some irrelevant information. So it will give you all details about the challenges, the cheat score, the current one, technical details here about node version, uptime, whatever, but also some business statistics about how much money is in the user wallets, how many orders have been submitted. So this is not really useful for an application that is typically used by one person, but it kind of shows how a proper dashboard for an actual shop application could look like. I already mentioned that we have documentation, and I would say it's really not the worst you can have for an open source project. So we have our so-called companion guide, which is available online very conveniently. It's running as an ASCII doc Antora on an ASCII doc Antora stack. So it's very easily browsable, searchable, and everything. You can even have different versions at the same time, so it's quite convenient. There's also a published PDF version, which I irregularly put on LeanPub, also for free, but sometimes people still donate some small amount when they download it, which is quite nice. And then it allows me to buy new stickers without bothering OWASP too much. Okay, quick information about the technology behind the Juice Shop. So back in 2014, I would say this was more or less bleeding edge web technology, right? With AngularJS, Bootstrap, Node.js, that was all super fancy. 10 years later, I would call it still modern. Maybe more like enterprisey modern, because not too many new projects, I think, will pick Angular now. I mean, in big enterprises, yes, but otherwise, maybe there's also alternatives. But it's still good as a rich internet application, I would say. Juice Shop was, I would say, always quite simple to install, no matter if you did it locally with Node.js or if you ran it as a Docker container. You could also pretty easily get it into every cloud environment, mostly with the Docker container or with the Docker image. So that was always quite easy. We also, because I'm a big test automation nerd, so I took care that we have good test coverage immediately right from the start of the project. So we have unit tests, we have API tests, and we have lots of end-to-end tests which actually exploit all the challenges through the browser or through the API. So that is quite unusual, I would say, for an open source project, this level of completeness. Just today, we released the version 1.0 of Juice Shop again, because if you try to get the old version from the GitHub source code, it will not work with current Node.js versions. But Yannick basically took the time to retrofit the version 1.0 in a way that that he could get it to run, put it into a Docker image, and you can now download this with the Docker pull command down here. Then you can enjoy this beautiful white layout if you like it. Good. Some information about the community behind the Juice Shop. I mentioned Yannick and Timo already as two of the core team members beside me. We also have Shubham, who is our fourth core team member. He was a Google Summer of Code student in 2022. He basically renovated our entire end-to-end test suite, switched it to a different technology stack. So this is us, but we have a lot more contributors who, in most cases, contribute 1 or 2 small things. And yeah, so I'm the big Pac-Man part here, but you can see, I guess it could be worse for an open source project, right? So if you have like almost 1/4 of not one person, but different people contributing, that's pretty good. And I would say by now, there are several things in the Juice Shop which I have no clue really technically how they work. So this whole Web3 stuff, for example, is not my specialty, let's say. But we still feel confident to have it in there because we have good test coverage. We also get lots of help for translating the Juice Shop. We are using Crowdin for that purpose, which is quite nice. That's why we also highly welcome contributions, be it on GitHub as code contributions or on Crowdin for translations. If you're going to the GitHub, there's a good first issue label that we give to easy tasks, or what we consider easy, and help wanted we put on things where we might not be the experts. GitHub stars, you can relatively easily spot where the project went into OWASP, right? So this was my personal account, then it went into OWASP and slowly started climbing. At some point it was for some reason trending on GitHub and made a big jump, but since then it's still steadily climbing and is now slightly over 10,000 stars. This is my personal favorite slide. So some statistics. So flagship project I already mentioned. We have a pretty nice test coverage. We have 350,000 downloads on GitHub. We have 70-something thousand downloads on SourceForge, where we mirror everything. And we do have, let me show this on a different slide, we have 82 million downloads from Docker Hub for all our Docker images combined, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. I hope nobody deploys it in production and uses it as a real web shop. We also have some other fun stuff. We, for example, have an official project pet. This is our family cat. And one of the hacking challenges is actually to find out what her name is, because one of the users, which you get in the Juice Shop by default, my users, I'm of course using our pet's name as the answer to the security question, right? So the job for that hacking challenge is find out what our cat's name is. And there's different places where you can find this, right? You can even see it here on the slides. So this is kind of a social stalking simulation, right? So if you tell too much about yourself publicly on the internet and then use it for security purposes, might not be the best idea. This photo is actually when shortly after her teeth had to be pulled out, so she not only has her fangs and front teeth left, and she wasn't so happy about that. So our cat first appeared in a video from the OWASP Benelux days in 2018, where I accidentally mentioned the name or typed it in live in a demo. And that video actually is in the top 1% of videos on the OWASP YouTube channel. Probably because people look at it to find out what the cat's name is. JuiceShop even has an official jingle. As we are a little bit running out of time, I will not play this, but I can highly recommend listening to this. This is not some bad soundbite. This is an actual almost 3-minute long song that Brian Johnson from the 7-Minute Security podcast made for us with guitar and percussion, everything. So really, really amazing piece of music. So highly recommend to listen to that. Maybe I can play that when the session is over and then when you pick up your stickers. We participate in the Google Summer of Code since 2018. We skipped this year because we didn't get any valuable submissions except for one, but that student picked another organization to work with, which is fine. But the other submissions we got were, let's say, easily spottable with the naked eye as AI-generated crap. So that I will not support as a as an open source project for Google Summer of Code. That's a waste of time for everyone. So I really hope that next year we get some better submissions, or the AI generators get better so they convince me again. But I hope the former. There's a dedicated website where you can see some daily updated project stats, like downloads and everything, if you're interested in such things. So I think it's the last 2 slides. Some information about our roadmap. So we want to get our test coverage back up. We have some technical debts to pay back. We have an ongoing Angular migration of the front end to the latest version, which unfortunately has some breaking changes, which cause some headaches. But most importantly, I just created because maybe I'm old, but I think NFT is still great. Or did that bubble burst? I don't think that bubble burst. So NFT is still great, which is why I set up on OpenSea a collection where I will gradually put all the backgrounds with the nice or not so nice AI art from these slides here, so 10 in total maximum, and put them up for auction. So the first one is currently available. For the equivalent starting bid is like $2.62, depending on the Ethereum or Ether exchange rate. So if you like, or even if you don't like it, but you are into NFTs or you used OpenSea before, feel free to bid on this. I think I paid for the minting already like $30, but I will even sell it for $4. That's totally fine, and then I will put the next one up and so on and so on. If nobody wants it, then I will not put the other 9 up. So I will wait until the first one is gone. So that's the end of the session. That is not the end of the Juice Shop. And I would now be still available for questions if you like, or you can come up here, take a look at the Lego box and grab some stickers. Are there any questions? Yes?
Yeah, ich will es nicht auf Deutsch machen, but for the Lego box, do you guys have like a 3D print for the casing and files on them?
Yes, we have in the OWASP Swag repository, so github.com/OWASP/OWASP-swag. There's a Juice Shop folder under projects that contains a subfolder Lego, which contains the building instructions with like 300 pages. It contains the model file for the Lego 3D modeling tool. It contains an Excel part list, which you can use to order the bricks. It's, yeah.
I have another question. I have an old instance of Juice Shop on Heroku. Is there a way to update, or do I have to scrap it, or what is the best way to maintain if you're running Juice Shop, or should I just pivot to something new?
Actually, we are using Heroku also still for our demo instance, but it just gets deployed automatically by the CI pipeline whenever our development or master branch build. So one, yeah. So I don't know how you set it up exactly, but it should, in the end, it shouldn't make a big difference if you scrap it and read. Yeah. Because Juice Shop wipes all the data anyway after every restart, right? So it's not that you would have to persist anything.
I just wasn't sure that the version was updated, like, so I just...
Yeah, not automatically. So you have to redeploy it then.